Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're watching or listening to this, and welcome to Link Up Leaders, your direct link to leaders in supply chain and e-commerce. My name is Lisa Kinski. I'm your producer and co-host, and joined as always by Francois Jeffrey. Francois, how are you doing today, dear?
I am great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Is that your birthday present that you're wearing?
It is. Yes, it is probably my favorite shirt now. Did it hurt when I told you to Google it? And I was right. Yes, absolutely. I think I was joking with Ryan about this, and I got many comments. I think Chris and Dustin also commented on my Instagram story about it. Is this a slight because I always ask you guys to just Google it? And it's not because I don't want to explain it to you, but I think a lot of things, if I have to Google it and I have to learn it, then I have to teach it to you and then probably re-Google it to try to teach it. Then it's easier to just ask you to Google it.
It's not a slight on you. It's just I don't know how to explain it. Like we ask you things that we know that you know the answer to. So instead of going to Google and going through the researching, it's like if we know we have a resource with the answer, why not ask that resource?
True.
But if you tell us like not sure, it's like, okay, cool, we'll Google it and then we'll tell you. But your response to everything is, did you Google it? So it can be like when we just hear it so often, it's like, man. So and I talked to Kate, and apparently you do this to her too. So she also loves
I do it to
shirt.
everyone. I do it to friends. It's one of those things where, and there's actually a website, and my buddy sent it to me a while back. It's LMG. It's let me Google it for you, just the acronym of it. And it's like you look up whatever it is, and it's like it goes directly into a Google search of whatever your question. It's a funny website.
That is funny.
But I guess I do. It's a thing. It's a thing. You know, sometimes things can be better researched on Google, and not so much because I don't know it, but because I think there are other perspectives on it too.
No, you're right. And we've like you and I, even in like last couple of days, like trying to navigate ads and all the things, like we've been Googling like crazy, and that's cool. And it's not that we're against Googling, but it's like when I remember one day specifically, I was just having like a rough day, and I asked you a question, and then immediately sent back, I was like, don't you dare ask me if I've Googled this. Tell me yes or no. And you responded back, but did you? I was like, I quit. I'm leaving. I'm done.
Well, I try to help when I can. And I think there's many things that I could help with, but I also, I do think there's value in researching. And when I say researching, it's not like diving deep and reading papers on it, but it's like, if you go through the act, and this is also a personal thing, when I go through the act of researching something and just checking on like, hey, is this right? Like, is there something else that I should know about that's second to this? Sure. I find value in Googling it because it's like, hey, I took the time to actually go through this. I'm learning it rather than, you know, because I've also ran into the case, and it's not you or Jack or anyone specific, but just generally in the office where I'm asked the same thing many times by the same people. So I'm just, hey, Google it. Maybe that'll help you just like retain it. It's kind of like when you write down notes when someone is lecturing, for example. But yeah, hands down, that's besides the point. This is my favorite shirt. And thank you guys for knowing me so well.
You're welcome. We were like, well, we could get him fancy tequila. It's like, he has fancy tequila. It's like, what does he not have? Like,
it's funny. My friends, the only gift that they have given me, and my credenza can speak to it, is all tequila. That's so like, I think that's all my friends think of me as, just a big drink. I don't drink that much, but when I do, I do enjoy a good tequila.
Yes. You always pay for the good stuff. And
yeah, why not?
You brought good stuff to Caves Giving, and I'm behind the thinking now. You're like, you don't feel bad if you drink the really high dollar stuff. I'm like, but I'm too cheap for that. And then you brought the good stuff over, and I was like, wait a minute. I don't feel like
a different level, a different bar. Yeah,
it is. Yes. Well, let's go ahead and bring on our guest today. We have with us Adam Pearce. He is with the Brand Commerce team. I almost said you're co-founder, correct? One of the co-founders of Brand Commerce.
Yeah, Blend. Yeah, so
Adam, Blend. Brand. Oh my God, what am I saying? Brand? Blend Commerce. Jesus.
Don't worry. You just need more coffee. It's fine.
I do, and I didn't even bring it in here with me. Like, what? Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm, as you say, I'm co-founder of Blend, actually with my brother-in-law, which is an interesting one.
Well, and it's funny. I remember I brought that up on our introduction call. If you look at the website, they look like almost twins. Like not brothers-in-law, brothers.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, did you start this with your brother? He's like, funny story. No. But they look so similar.
The team always kind of come back to and say, like, we need to change our profile pictures on our project management system. So these tiny little icons are like, is that Adam or is that Peter? They're never kind of sure. So yeah, it does get a bit.
You have to define it by the attitudes. Maybe one of you is a little bit more glim than the other. Just change the background color a little bit. The shades reflect your personality.
Yeah, I think a full-on kind of like clown wig, big red nose for me. Kind of joke glasses. That's how I define my personal style, I think.
There you go.
Love it. Well, how did you come to co-founding Blend Commerce?
Yeah, so to answer you, I think like a lot of people in e-commerce, look, this is a relatively new game. So I stepped into this after basically doing 3 or 4 different careers. So I left college, university, went to work for a consulting firm. Thought I was going to be this kind of like high-flying jet setter around the world. Ended up working kind of in a very nondescript office trying to learn SQL, which wasn't great. I then decided I want to be a teacher. So I went to teaching kind of 3 or 4 years. And then kind of said, actually, I want to do something in between. And I ended up working in marketing for an educational app company. And during that time, that's kind of, I guess, what I learned my trade, as a marketer. And about sort of 6-7 years ago, my brother-in-law came to me and said, look, I've basically decided I'm going to retrain as a developer. And there's this great new platform called Shopify coming around. And I think it's going to be great. And like a lot of people, I went, yeah, whatever. It'll just be another kind of, flash in the pan. Mm-hmm. And I've never been so happy to be wrong and to be wrong to my brother-in-law as well. So, from then, obviously, we set about kind of creating a company. And when I say company, it was 2 slightly overweight guys sat around a kitchen table, pretending we had an agency. And we're here now, 20 members of staff. Just love being part of the Shopify world.
That's awesome. And where are you based out of? We didn't cover that in the very beginning.
Yeah, so we are based just outside of Stratford-upon-Avon in the UK, which is kind of it's a couple of hours from London. So we are literally in this very old-fashioned Roman town where if you're listening North America, you're probably seeing kind of images of the kind of crooked buildings. That's where we are. And then there's this e-commerce agency in this crooked town full of old people using Zimmer frames. And collecting their pensions, and there's us guys making websites. So yeah, it's a bit of a juxtaposition, but it works.
That's awesome. But you guys work with Shopify owners that are based globally, correct? Not just within the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the interesting thing is that actually about 70% of the people we work with are in North America. Mm-hmm. A lot of them tend to be East Coast, and I think the reason is that when Shopify started, look, it was, of course, a big thing in North America, particularly obviously Canada and USA. And we've just kind of gone from there. We worked with very small brands who became bigger brands and bigger. And I think, people kind of resonated with the fact that we, the stuff that we've done with those American brands, other American brands kind of latched onto it. And it's interesting. I don't know if you guys kind of, feel the same. It's always very different working with people in different countries. And I think you kind of have to learn how people react to certain things, and kind of what their kind of preference set is. So it's been interesting, as a Brit, learning kind of the American way of working. If I'm honest with you, I kind of prefer it. Sorry, guys.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
What about it do you prefer?
I think the thing is, that with kind of British culture, we tend to ask the price of things first, before we even kind of know, what it is that we want. And there's always this kind of joke, about Brits is when you tell us the price of something, we go, and, I think with American brands that we work with, I think there's always more of a conversation about, hey, look, this is what we think is the problem. What do you think? What could you do? And, okay, guys, how much would it cost us to do that? And that's always obviously a much easier conversation to have, because you kind of got that open, I guess, license to have a discussion. When you kind of put that price question in first, which, a lot of the time British brands tend to do, you've kind of got that barrier up at the kind of initial point. And I think it sometimes can prevent you from kind of getting deeper into a conversation. I think we always try and say to clients, look, try and be vulnerable with us, give us, your true opinion of, look, where you are, what the problems are. And yes, there will be a solution that's going to cost more, but there'll be a solution that costs less. And it just depends on, what you've got in the business to be able to do it. So yeah, it's a very different, conversation, I think. But yeah, I hope I haven't pissed all of our British clients off.
It's interesting because we see almost the opposite when it comes to product sourcing. A lot of times in the US, it tends to be, hey, I want this product at a certain price and it can't go above that price. And it's very much, hey, I'm going to get this price no matter what, take it or leave it. I am the expert, even if they've never done it in the past. They maybe watched a video, or it's this American mindset of, hey, I know more than you. I know that I'm the buyer and the customer is always right. So that's why I found that extremely interesting.
Yeah, I did too. And I was thinking maybe we feel like we ask it super early too, because we're always talking in terms of having discussions with Chinese suppliers where you really have to take a long time to build that relationship and have a lot of discussion and stuff. So we'll ask it maybe in the first 3 or 4 steps, whereas you got to wait 12 steps down the road. But you're saying Brits, it's like, hello, what does this cost? Like first jump.
It's also about, like, do you want it done or do you want it done right? Right. And what does right mean to you?
Yes.
Like, do you want someone to hold your hand throughout the process? Well, that's probably going to cost more. Do you want it taught to you, or do you just want to hand it off and have someone worry about it? They're all different price points. And I think a lot of times businesses, particular business owners that might be newer to the e-commerce realm and are newer to the service providers in it and the partners that they can get to, they don't know. So their first thought might be, hey, just how much does that cost? How is that compared to this other agency that I talked to? What promises are they making? They're both making very similar promises. They both work with PPC, or they both work with customer experience. Well, that one's cheaper than this one. But they don't think about, like, well, what clients have they worked with? Are they similar to me? I'm doing a health and beauty or a beauty brand, and they've only worked with apparel. I mean, it's so many different questions that they need to ask. So when it comes to, you talked about sort of getting into this development realm within Shopify. So what exactly within that development do you do?
Yeah, so we kind of go down 2 routes, and it's kind of like you were saying there, Francois. It depends on what people are looking to kind of achieve. So some clients will come in with us and they'll be saying, look, we're not happy with what our website is doing for us right now. And a lot of the time it's like, well, we don't feel our conversion rate is good enough. But the question is, with that is that, well, what should your conversion rate be? And what actually is it you want that conversion rate to do? So for example, what is the financial goal that this website should be performing for your business? Because let's face it, the website is just one tool of what you've got. What should that website be contributing? So in that sense, some people will work with us on a purely come in and say, look, let's go and redesign our website to try and improve that one core metric. So that's kind of the one angle. And then what we'll do is that we'll kind of start from point dot and say, right, okay, let's look at what it's doing right now. Let's look at what we've done previously. We think you need to do these things on the site, and then we'll redesign that and then basically give that website back to that client and say, right, okay, here's where you are now. Let's go and put that back out there. Now, I think that's a good option. It works for some brands, but I think the majority of people that we work with are kind of coming to us and saying, right, we know that the website needs to change, but we know there are other things within the business we need to do, and we need some kind of help implementing those. So when it comes to us, we're kind of thinking about, right, from a customer experience point of view, how does that actually then lead through to ROI? And I think that's one of the things, that we found is that there isn't always that assumption of, can you improve customer experience? Because it feels like a fluffy kind of, oh, that's lovely, everyone has a nice time in a website. But actually, when you kind of put some hard numbers against it, that's what people want to hear about. And that's when in the development context, we will be working with a client between, sort of 6 and 12 months, and then implementing things based on testing that we've done with them to then bring up the customer experience and then bring up their customer lifetime value, which is basically kind of our North Star metric.
Yeah, and that was something that just while you were talking, I was thinking, I think a lot of people in terms of customer experience kind of equate it to like the in-store shopping experience. Like, was there
Mm.
somebody to help me? Was the store clean? Did they have the size that I needed or the variation of the product? But then you brought up customer lifetime value. So obviously you want to have those folks come back. How much of the customer experience are you having? How much of it is pre-purchase and how much is post-purchase, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is, we all probably do it in our own companies, and I know we're guilty of it in the past as well, is that every business out there always puts so much emphasis on that part of customer experience of getting people into the store, whether that's a physical store or online store.
Mhm.
But what happens is, as soon as that customer commits to a purchase, the slope is going downwards, and we sort of go, hey, yeah, we've won, we've got a sale, and it goes do, 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 do. And really what we've got to do is say, actually, we've got to kind of level that out a little bit more, because a lot of the time, yes, look, you've got a limited budget as a business, unless you're, you haven't got a budget, well, fair play to you, great, but most people in that position, leveling that out all the way through is important. So for example, look, a lot of brands will be putting a lot of cash into their acquisition ads. Great, got to be done, everyone needs acquisition, but the question is that if you're a little bit smarter with those ads and you had maybe a smaller segment that you were approaching, could you then actually bring people into your business as customers, take some of that cash you were going to use to acquire them to spend on customer service as they go through the process, making sure that you have, a really good unboxing experience, so maybe improving your packaging. Will that then actually lead to those customers you bring in being with you for a longer period, and then obviously over the course of spending more and more and more with you, increase that lifetime value? So we're obsessed with acquisition in e-commerce, aren't we? It's all about getting people the door to buy. But actually, if you take a step back and go, right, let's actually not put so much into that first part, to put less in at the start and then give them more throughout the process, your ROI is actually going to go up, because you're not then doing that kind of, say it and spray it with cash from an acquisition point of view. You're getting a smaller subset and then working them harder from a, getting cash from them in a sales point of view.
Do you find that that's a difficult conversation to have with business owners, kind of changing that mindset from being so acquisition focused to kind of, like you said, leveling out that effort?
I think it is, and I find interesting is that it also, we deal with founders, we deal with e-commerce managers, we deal with e-commerce directors, and it's interesting, where they've come from previously. So if you're dealing with a CEO who's come from a finance background, CLV kind of makes more sense to them. If they come from a marketing background like me, we're all about that initial hit, right? What did this ad convert at? What was the ROAS on this ad set? So it depends on kind of who you're talking to, but I think generally speaking, it is a harder thing to grasp the concept of it and to kind of latch onto, because ultimately what we're talking about in CLV is a predicted number that we expect to get from a kind of a profitability of a customer. So we are in a sense hypothesizing. I would argue, that the hypothesis that you're making there is founded on good data, if you've got that data. But it definitely is, a difficult conversation when in e-commerce, we tend to be completely obsessed with two things. One is conversion rate, and the second one is return on ad spend, ROAS. And it's only when you go into those conversations about saying, look, are those actually the best numbers to look at? From our perspective, they're not, and here's why. You then start to then get into that conversation like, right, I understand now, okay, why we need to spread out that spend throughout the course of, having that customer from the point they click on the website to the point they put in their last order with you.
Can you walk us through this customer journey a little bit? Because I think a lot of businesses and agencies define it in different ways. They might have 8 steps to it. They might have 3 steps to it. But business owners, sometimes they might conceptualize it a little bit differently. Like you said, maybe they don't even know what their ROAS is. like ultimately their lifetime value of their customer. They might just see, hey, this is one sale. Great. I'm reselling to this customer. I didn't know that I was reselling to that customer, but I'm reselling to that customer. So can you break up this customer journey to sort of formulate this lifetime value?
Yeah. So when it comes generally, I think first of all, you've got to split it into 3 different pots. The first one is what happens before the sale, what happens during the sale, and then what happens after the sale. So on a high level, thinking about it in that context is the first place to start. And if you think about it, look, if you're thinking about kind of, imagine you've got, a pack of jelly beans, you're kind of attributing those out to those 3 different pots to start off with. The first thing in terms of, the pre-sale part, it is kind of twofold. It is about obviously how you bring customers in, and whether that's organically, whether that's through paid mediums, whether it's through working with influencers. But it's then about thinking, right, when we bring that customer in through that journey, through that channel, what are they then going to expect from the site or the landing page that they're going to? So I'll give you an example with that. If, let's say, for example, you are a shoe brand and you are using an influencer to bring in traffic. Now, from that point of view, you are bringing someone into your brand off that link based on that affiliation or relationship they have with their influencer. So if that's the case, there are plenty of personalization tools out there now. Wouldn't it be great if actually the landing page that person goes to is then one of those influencers that have come in with essentially the homepage of that influencer on wearing those particular shoes? Equally, if you are then bringing people in organically from an SEO keyword such as, comfiest trainers 2022, from that keyword, maybe then what you do from a personalization is say that from that keyword in terms of your site, when people come to the homepage, what they're going to see is voted the comfiest trainer in the United States 2022 by, X magazine, for example. Now, obviously, I know not all brands have ability to do that, but personalizing that message at the start doesn't need to be creepy. And I think the problem is over the past few years, people have got a bit creeped out with personalization.
How do you mean?
Because the thing is, look, frankly, if I go to, Nike and they're saying, hey, Adam, want to buy some new trainers? I'm gonna be like, what the heck? Like, I don't want them talking my name on a website. Like, it just is weird. And, this whole thing, like at the moment, I get LinkedIn messages from people with these kind of whiteboards where my name is superimposed on. It freaks me out. When you talk about personalization, give me something that I actually want to see. Help me do something. Help me get value from that product. And I think when people think about personalization, don't get it twisted and think you've got to be, personalizing all your emails with their name and saying, oh, remember your birthdays in 36 days. No, personalization to me is about giving that customer an experience that makes them go, damn, you know what? That is the thing that I'm looking for. Or yeah, I did have that question, because that where that person's coming from, if you give them an ad that serves them up 3 of the core benefits, you are then building on those core benefits in the landing page that they then go to. So, frankly, and again, you don't have to do this overnight. Take your 3 biggest traffic sources, look at where they're coming from, and then just personalize that journey first of all. So that's the first part. The second part is during that sale. So what I mean by this is the point at which they are on that product page and they are clicking to purchase. And I think there's a few things here, that are super simple that everyone can do right now. First thing I would say is when you go to checkout, you will have usually an option to include some information below that point of which people then are committing. So a lot of brands, what they will do is put all of their website, free shipping and returns, 40-day return process, guaranteed, fit or money back, all that stuff. Get to the point at which you are about to click and put in your credit card details, zip, nothing. Why aren't we telling people at that point that information? That's about customer experience, because ultimately they are deciding whether they trust you. They are deciding whether you have conquered that fear that they have with giving you credit card details. So giving that information is about the customer experience. And then really after it, then it is about hand holding. And, if you go onto LinkedIn right now and type in post-purchase flow or thank you flow in email, you are going to get a ton of results. And a lot of these things tend to revolve around two things. One is them saying, hey, thanks for purchasing. And the second thing is, give me a review. And ultimately, you got to think about that customer needs help in the different stages. So for example, making sure, once you've got that delivery confirmation, great to hear you got the package. Do you have any initial questions for us now? If you're a shoe brand, let's think about it for a second. When you get a new pair of shoes, put them on, you're going to try them, you wear them for that first day. You're going to know by the next morning if your feet are aching or whether actually it's been a really comfy day. How was the first day in your shoes? Let us know. So all those touch points you can have, brands miss out on, but are so simple. And it's not going to cost you anything because, look, ultimately, you paid for your, email service provider, and all you're going to do is extend out those messages to not be about give us a review, but right, how was the experience at this point for you? How are you feeling now? Is there anything we can do to help you at this point? If you do that, you're going to get the review anyway. But you just got to be, checking in with them more. And for me, that's kind of what the customer journey should ultimately be looking like.
Do you think there's a fear from business owners or from website builders or maybe just the marketing team even that including, let's say, free returns or including how you handle customer care, that will incentivize the customer to return something rather than having them keep it and leave you a review, whether that's positive or negative?
I think there is. And another example, I think, Francois, is subscriptions. Look, subscriptions have gone crazy the past 2 years. Look, a lot of people are doing a lot of great things. The number one fear, and I tell you this for sure because I talked to a lot of them, of subscription brands is churn. Are people going to take the subscription and then get rid of us within a month? Now, what I've noticed over the past 12 months is that a lot of brands are being a lot more open about how you cancel a subscription.
Yes.
And for me, and I've seen this through data with some of our clients, the more they've promoted how easy it is to cancel a subscription, the more improvements in churn they've seen. Because it's that level of confidence of the customer to go, right, I'm not at risk here. If I do want to cancel, that option is there. But ultimately, that's part of that customer experience you're giving to them to say, look, it's okay if you do want to cancel, that's here. You're protected. It's always that thing, isn't it, that when you want to cancel something, if you don't know, if you're feeling of trepidation about what might happen, and you're having to search for it and find it and email different people, it's going to make you intent then on actually cancelling. But what you see is that when brands make it super simple, what they can do is then improve the customer experience. Okay, simple button on the site, I want to cancel. Great. Tell us a reason why you want to cancel. Well, actually, I'm finding that I'm stockpiling my face cream. Oh, well, actually, what we can do for you there is actually extend out your subscription so that you're going to get it every 3 months rather than every month. Okay, great. So those kind of things there that you can do rather than making it super hard to cancel, allowing that greater flexibility, that ultimately then is going to improve your CLV because you're binary at the moment. If you make it hard, they're either in or they're out. When you make it easier and more interaction, you've got that option then to maybe up or down that subscription at different points of the year. And ultimately, that's what you need, especially if you're a founder that wants to sell your business, because investors are going to want to be looking at that CLV number and you want to keep that as high as it possibly can be.
Yeah, I think making your cancellation policy as clear and easily to be understood and simple as possible is really important. I think also something that's been really powerful that these subscription models have done, some of them, is allowing you to pause or delay a delivery instead of maybe changing the frequency, just being like, hey, I'm short on cash this month, or hey, Christmas was more expensive than I expected, as it always is. I just need to push this off 1 month. That is huge to be able to let people do that. And that'll get me with a subscription every time. It's like, oh, I can push this off, or every time. That'll always do it for me. I love that.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So what are some of the simple changes? Because before we talked about this, you also mentioned that sometimes you'll look at a site and it'll just be clear, hey, we've seen these certain things work in the past. Are there some commonalities that you're finding between businesses that they're just not doing that could be very simple wins, quick fixes that their team might even not have thought about because they are so involved in the business, so focused on that next sale?
Absolutely. I would say, Francois, that the number one problem with the majority of Shopify stores tends to be around the main navigation of the site. And what I mean by that is that if you take a look at, I would say food brands are pretty bad for this, beauty brands are pretty bad for this, is you will go to a site and it will say shop by skin type, 4 or 5 different types of skin, shop by scent, 4 or 5 different scents, and so on and so forth. So as a customer who's coming to that site, who has got that core thing that they want to do is improve their skin, where do you go? Well, I think I know what my skin type is. Yeah, I think I know what eucalyptus is, but where am I starting? Where am I going? And I think that is always the core problem, is that there is always going to be this feeling from e-commerce brand owners, I've got to give them all the options so that they can pick the right one. Particularly, when you're shopping on mobile, 70 to 90% of sales are now coming from mobile. That's super hard to do. So if you can simplify that process by basically giving them the job that has to be done. So, for example, shop now to reduce dryness, shop now to get a glow. That's a much easier thing to kind of comprehend. What you can then do is guide them through when they're on that product page of the things that they then can buy. Another great thing that's happening at the moment is a lot of brands are opting to use very simple quizzes on site. So, for example, you can go onto a site and it will say, you have a navigation, say, not sure where to start, take our quiz. Now, again, I'll use kind of skincare as a good example. In that quiz, you can be asking the questions about lifestyle, routine, diet, all of these things that are, number one, helping you make a better recommendation to that client. But secondly, data that you can use, again, then to personalize their onboarding journey. So if I know, for example, Francois, you come to my men's skincare brand, I know that you are a busy executive that doesn't have much time. You perhaps, don't have the greatest diet at the moment, but you're doing lots of exercise. I can think about all those things and say, right, for you, Francois, the perfect product is this. Give them that product, and then that is then also going to help them convert. And we've seen, through work that we've done and also different studies, that sometimes these quizzes are converting people at between 25 and 40% to a sale. Now you compare that look to the average e-commerce store, you're looking at kind of 3 to 4% conversion. It's massive, but it's such a simple thing you can do. But again, a lot of brands think about, right, we need to give everyone all the options rather than helping them get to an option, which I think is the number one thing that I would say.
Yeah, it seems very, very technical, right? When you think about a site, yeah, you do want to give them all the options. That's at the end of the day, that's what the site is, to provide them all the options. But it seems very technical to where you have a menu, and the menu provides you every single thing under the moon, versus like, what are you actually looking for? So what is that first question that you usually kick off those conversations with? When you do look at someone's site, let's say a business owner is looking at their own site, what should they ask? Let's say they're having steady sales. Nothing is going wrong necessarily, but they want to grow. They know that there is potential for improvement. Is there a certain question that you lead off with?
When ultimately for us is that when we talk to a Shopify brand owner, we ask them one simple question to start with: what is the number that you want in the next 12 months? So is that X amount of sales? Is it X amount of profit? Do you want to grow your team by a certain number? In which case, what is the revenue that you'll need from this site? So we kind of do away with all the traditional, right, okay, conversion rate question, speed question, because ultimately that's too granular. Because at that point, if you're talking about conversion immediately, you're also then passing off all the other factors that go into getting to that top number. So that's the first thing that we would ask someone. And then from that, we would then drip down. And it's a tricky one because, look, when merchants will come to us and they will say, look, I don't like X element of my site. I don't feel that this product page is great because the copy is not great, for example. it's hard because look, we listen to that and we go, okay, right, we understand that, but what's the numbers behind it?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that in relation to that overall revenue number or that overall CLV? So we just then kind of have to do a bit more kind of breakdown of saying, right, this is what you think is an issue at the moment. We are either going to prove or disprove that hypothesis to you. And then if that isn't the case, we're going to say, well, actually, this is the thing that we can see here from the data that is the biggest problem. And we think this is going to get you the fastest path to getting to that overall number at the top. So it's tricky because, ultimately, brands that come to us, like you say, as a founder, your brand, it's like my business. Yeah, my business is my baby. And it's hard when someone kind of comes in and says, well, actually, yeah, you think this thing's important. It's not. And I think that's going back to my point at the start, is that when people work with an agency, my biggest advice to them is to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
and literally lay your cards on the table, and if you feel like, look, I really wish that my store was doing $1 million a month, put that on the table, because that then gives a target for your agency to go, right, if that's where you want to be, here's where you are now. These are the things that's wrong on the site from a data point of view. Let's fix it to get to there. And I think that is the ultimate thing that you have to do. I know sometimes when we talk with Shopify brands that are on the platform, it sometimes doesn't work out because some don't want to kind of be that vulnerable. They just want to say, hey, just go and redesign the site. But ultimately, what's the point for us? Because we need to be, as an agency, to be able to prove the things that we have done and have an impact. And we need a number to be able to actually put that as a metric too. So yeah, it's a tricky one, I must say.
Is this something where, because you've mentioned data a lot, and I think a lot of times it's great to have as much data as you can, but solely being quantitative, I think, has its negative impacts if you don't have the qualitative data to support it. How are you combining sort of the quantitative and the qualitative data on site? We've talked to people or guests in the past that have talked about, for example, using a quick survey. Why are you leaving the site? Or what didn't you like? Or was the price too high? Because, for example, the business owner that looks at the page and says, hey, I just don't like it. Well, and you ask, well, what don't you like about it? If they do rely on like, hey, well, I'm selling this mug and it only has 1,000 hits a month versus the other mug that I have that has 20,000 hits a month. It could be that other mug is trending or something of the sorts. I guess, how do you use quantitative and qualitative data to make these changes in development?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of depends on each stage of the process. And the first thing that we tend to do would be to do what we would call a jobs to be done survey. And anyone listening is, kind of read into this kind of idea. And the idea is that when you have a set of customers, we've been obsessed in the past about trying to create customer profiles. So, our customer is, a 40-year-old woman who lives on the West Coast of the United States, for example. The problem is with that is that actually those profiles are frankly outdated. And what I mean by that is that if you focus on speaking to a number of customers and finding out what is the core thing that the product they have bought going to do for them, that's essentially where the marketing and the targeting should work. So, for example, there's an example of a brand in the UK that was kind of a nutrition drink. And what the founders did is when they started out is they said, look, this drink is going to be for athletes who are recovering from sports injury. And all of their marketing was about this idea that, look, you are a recovering athlete who is going to use this drink to get better. Now, the interesting thing is that, look, sales were bobbling along. It was kind of going okay. And then they went and did a jobs to be done survey. And what they found is that actually it wasn't athletes who were buying their drinks. It was actually people who were trying to boost their immunity. And their single jobs to be done were actually to boost their immunity and feel better. Now, what they did after that is they then changed their messaging and their branding and their advertising to reflect on that core job to be done. So that's, I think for me, from a qualitative point of view, you're going out and asking different types of customer that you have. And for us, that will be based on RFM, so recency, frequency, and monetary factors, and grouping them into different parts. and then saying, right, from each of those groups, what is the core thing that this product has to do to them? And you can think about, think about big brands like Nike. If I go and buy a pair of Air Max, the job to be done for me will probably be different, perhaps, to you, Francois. So for me, it might be because, look, my feet are aching all the time from doing conferences and speaking gigs, and I just need to actually have a comfy pair of shoes that are going to make my feet feel good. For you, because obviously I can tell by your T-shirt you're a stylish guy, your job to be done is going to be about basically complementing your outfit and making you look fly. So for you and I, our core job to be done in the qualitative phase is very different. And we can use that information that we've got with the quantitative data to better sell. But then when you get further down, things like NPS scores, wildly overlooked by the vast majority of e-commerce brands. Typically, NPS scores, you get, NPS questions, maybe 3 to 4 questions, you're going to get a hit rate of probably about 15 to 25%. That data is valuable because what it means is you're getting that qualitative, right? How was the experience for you versus with how much money do they put on the line? So is what they're saying with their wallets the same as what they're saying to you inside the head from a qualitative point of view? So again, there's an opportunity there to get that qualitative and the quantitative. And I think the point you made there about the qualitative side, Francois, is look, you can't just do one or the other. And a lot of agencies, ourselves included, up until, quite recently, would think of data purely at that quantitative measure. Let's look at your conversion rate. Let's look at your AOV, blah, blah, blah. But it's only until you get that qualitative side together where they go, right, okay, I understand the whole story now of why people are doing that because they feel this way. And that, therefore, is impacting on their average order value. So for me, that's the important thing. Put the two together to actually get the answer you need.
Good question, Francois.
Thank you. That's your job. And so to sort of follow up with that, how are you gathering this? First of all, can we dive a little bit deeper into the NPS? How does a company start to acquire an NPS score, and what is sort of a bar? Are there different NPS bars for different categories?
Yeah, so from an NPS point of view, essentially what you're looking there for is to be taking NPS scores at different points and for different people. So, an NPS score, typically, there is lots of software out there. You can set up very simply to do this. And all it will be is, and you probably all experience this, you complete a sale on the site and it just says, can we just ask you a few questions about your experience today? And literally you're just going in there, you're probably rating a company from 1 to 5. What happens, I would say there, is that from an NPS perspective, it's very much like all data in that, you can say there is a benchmark to get to, but ultimately the core thing here is about where you start and then what you progress to. And I would say it's more about not actually that score that you get, but the progression that you are making towards that upward scale. And what you'll see a lot of the time is when you look at the data and you start seeing dips in NPS, you'll see that correlation with the data from AOV. That's always kind of a typical one that you'll see. So making sure that you are keeping track of that and have the finger on the pulse, see what's happening. And then basically the other thing is with NPS is when you get a really poor NPS score, those are your most important ones that you dive on. That's when you get the service team say, hey, look, wanted to reach out to you, realize you didn't have a great experience. Can we just ask you a few more questions? We'd like to give you, $100 gift card to hear more about your experience. Frankly, for $100, are you going to get $100 worth of value out of that customer that's going to give you feedback on the experience from maybe 1,000 customers? Yeah, of course you are.
Of course.
And, that's the thing, as human beings, we love having our ego boosted, don't we? We love it when we get a 5-star review. We always talk about that. But when there's a negative review, our subconscious goes, yeah, but it's only one person. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, well, they were annoyed with this anyway because they came in from this channel, blah, blah, blah. But actually, if you can have thick skin and go, right, actually, let's find out. Let's go and get more information. You will get a ton of information that you can then use to help improve. So it's not just about doing the NPS. It's doing it. It's tracking it. And then it's the follow-up that you do afterwards as well.
And is there a certain point in the customer journey that you would be asking this? For example, if they land on the listing or if they've added something to a cart, I feel like it's very hard to obtain that from someone that just, let's say, is more so in the research phase as a consumer. I went to the site. I'm not too interested. I'm not going to spend time filling out a survey because I didn't care to begin with. I guess is there a certain point? Is there certain listings that you should target? Are you looking at entry points, someone that's more intent to buy it versus something that's more of just like, hey, I'm just curious about this?
So we would tend to sort of recommend as a first step 2 points. One would be at the point of payment. So once that transaction's gone through, then having that immediate post-purchase NPS, but then also doing a post-delivery NPS. So what you're going to see from that is actually, right, how did they feel at the point at which they've committed to buying with you? And then how did they then feel at the point at which that product is being delivered and they've interacted with it? So from that point of view, you're going to see the gaps and disparities between the two. And from that gap, if it's obviously, more negative, you know that onboarding, that hand-holding process talked about needs to be improved. That's the first thing. But I think the other thing of this is that when it comes to NPS, because of the tools that are out there now, you can also focus on sub-segments. So for example, when we kind of look at recency, frequency, and monetary, you will start to look at particular products that essentially appear toxic. So what I mean by this is that a lot of brands will have one or two products that when people purchase them, that then leads to a customer who doesn't then tend to buy much or is a poorer customer in terms of working with them for the longer term. Now, what you can then do is put a specific NPS on that product to work out, right, is it the product itself or is it the channels that we are acquiring these particular customers from? So, a good example of this is that, when brands bring out a special edition product, sometimes what can happen with these is that you will get people who wouldn't automatically associate with your brand. Or, for example, if you have a product that is a collaboration with another brand. So let's say, for example, I'm making something up here, but let's say Spider-Man team up with Adidas to bring out a new pair of sneakers for the release of the latest movie. Mm-hmm. That sometimes can lead to a toxic product because what you're doing there is you're bringing traffic into the Adidas site, which are essentially Spider-Man fans who probably don't fit exactly what you're looking for in an Adidas customer. Mm-hmm. Then what happens is that you then commit all this marketing effort and budget to getting that Spider-Man Adidas customer to buy the next product, and they never do it. And all they do is they just buy the Spider-Man product and they leave. And if you can identify those, one thing is that you can then obviously reduce the marketing budget you put into them. Or if it's a toxic product we'll talk about, we would recommend a brand not to do that. Now, obviously, that's difficult when you've got brands that have got collaborations with others, because it's basically saying to look, hey guys, look, unfortunately, you made a bad mistake here, but that's our job. If our job that we've been tasked with is to get the overall number that we talked about at the start there up. So I think that's the thing for me is that you can make NPS far more specific once you find out more data. But the key thing is start simply post-purchase, immediate, and then post-delivery, and then work from there as you get more and more and more data, make it more and more specific.
That's an interesting example you've given there, and I only say that because the shoe brand Vans does that a lot. Like I'm not a Vans customer, but at a point in time they were having Van Gogh printed Vans, and my friend was having a son named Vander who's going to go buy Van, so we were going to get Vans for Van. It was just going to be hilarious. Yeah. But they do that a lot. They've had like Nightmare Before Christmas. They've had like different Marvel movies. I mean, so they've kind of built that into their strategy almost. That's interesting that you've given that as an example. I mean, can that be a strategic move for certain businesses, kind of bringing in those other audiences? Maybe. I guess it would depend on the kind of product.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does kind of depend, but I think the other thing is, if we think about Vans in that context as well, I guess it would also depend on on that one is that where is that marketing budget being committed and what is the relationship between those two brands? Because if they're essentially looking at that as, okay, right, this is we have multiple types of these products coming in, that we never have the expectation that this is going to lead to a lifetime customer with a big CLV. then you kind of say, great, if you're evaluating it from the perspective that this is going to be a one-time purchase that particular customer is going to have, then I would say, fine, great. But I think the majority of brands out there, what they want to do at the moment, because of obviously the increasing cost of ads, and because of cookies and iOS and all this other stuff that's happening in the world, is saying, right, once we get them into our funnel, how do we keep them there as long as possible and actually reduce the acquisition cost? So I'm absolutely not saying those kind of collabs can't work, because look, hey, my experience with those is limited. But I think what we've seen is that when you have those situations where there is a particular product that is a little bit of an outlier in terms of what that company offers, and it doesn't latch on neatly to the next purchase, the third, the fourth, the fifth purchase, there's that kind of element of risk that you can kind of foresee.
Okay. So that's sort of the hypothesis that we've always been talking about, as to are we hypothesizing that this is a one-off purchase and it's purely for sales, or maybe it's a hypothesis that someone will wear those Vans and say, hey, I kind of like these. These are maybe customers that they wouldn't target traditionally in marketing. That makes sense. And when we say NPS, we're referring to the Net Promoter Score. Is that right?
Yeah. Sorry, I hate when people use acronyms and don't define them, and I've just done exactly that thing. So I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make sure we clarified there. And so Net Promoter Score, I think, is very important. But I think when we go back to put the business owner's hat on, we were talking a lot about how they might focus on that acquisition of new traffic and just new traffic to their website. A big part of that, I feel like, is quantitative. It's the only way that you can actually measure people dropping off from certain listings, or did they browse the site, how they browse the site after that. Is there any way to make that more of a qualitative data that you can acquire in that just initial journey?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with NPS, effectively, look, all it is just a quiz. It's just a questionnaire, a couple of questions on the site. Let's face it, it's not anything kind of particularly special. So customers are kind of used to doing that now. A couple of examples I've seen that are really good, and not brands that we work with, but a couple of brands that I've seen in the Shopify space have done this, is that if they then have essentially an exit intent pop up, which a lot of brands do, the common thing to do there would be to say, hey, want 10% off your purchase with X brand. And sometimes it works. But again, are you really going to learn anything from that? Maybe not. Are you going to acquire a price sensitive customer? Potentially. So what I've seen done before is that you have a little pop up in the corner that will say, looks like we can't help you this time, but maybe we could. So you're going to got a bit of a tease, and there's a link, and you click on that link, and then literally it just goes to what looks essentially like an NPS score. And then it says, we'd love to get your feedback on how you arrived here today and win the chance to get $1,000 gift card from X brand. And essentially you run that as a competition. So it's kind of less invasive. It gives the opportunity for you to say, well, actually, we think we can see there's a problem with organic traffic, or we can see there's a problem with, paid traffic from Google. Let's use that pop-up as an exit intent to get people into that and then learn something from it. So for me, I think that's a super smart way of doing it, because it just means that you then giving someone something a little bit extra. If they're going away anyway, the 10% thing, a bit average, but are you giving the people that opportunity maybe to, win, $1,000 or win a gift card, or win an experience or a gift, or whatever it might be, by just asking a few questions about how you got there, then hey, yeah, why not?
That makes sense, especially in a world today where maybe 5-10 years ago, leaving your email was extremely valuable. But I know, for example, if someone offers me the 10%, I'll put it in just to have it. But I also have over 54,000 emails to that specific inbox that I leave on every single site. So it's something where they would never be able to actually target me or reach me unless they got something like my phone number and texted me. But even I probably wouldn't do that. So it definitely makes sense where it's more so for validated learning, utilization tool for validated learning versus just trying to get a sale and retargeting them potentially through email. No, it's interesting. It's a very interesting conversation that we've had today in regards to sort of the customer journey. It's a different take than I think a lot of business owners typically have, because as we mentioned, it's more so hey, how much traffic can we get, but not so much what is the process after that. It's, you can only go so far with having, I understand, having 1 million eyeballs on your listing is great because you could have a high amount of sales from it. Is there anything else that business owners could just have quick wins on when it comes to what is that next step once they land on that listing? When I've gone onto sites, sometimes I see they keep trying to push things on me. Hey, buy this also. Hey, and it just looks like buy all these things on this page. I just came to this listing to just see something. Are there any fails that you see that a lot of business owners take on just that initial landing page?
I think, yeah, but particularly your product pages, I think the number one thing that we always see is that when people tend to build an e-commerce website, they will have a homepage and about us and our story, for example. Mm-hmm. Now, in those pages, there is some brilliant information about how the company began, what their morals are, what their ethics are, how the products are made. And then what you do is you go to a product page and it just says, blah, 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 X pair of sneakers, X t-shirt, cost $15. That's it. And the problem is that people are making that assumption that you are a bit like, going to a proper retail store, going to walk around the whole store and then decide what you're going to buy. That's not going to be the case, because ultimately, if you're driving paid traffic or organic traffic, you're going straight to that product page. I'm not going to go and have a look on the home page or the About Us page. So what you want to do is pull in that great information you've got onto that product page. So, just below where, for example, you have your buy now button, are you listing all those things there? Handmade in the USA, 40-day returns policy, guaranteed to fit policy, all those things that can be there that you've got all over the website, people don't bring in. Or actually the founder story. I love seeing great founder stories on product pages, because ultimately, once you go past that point of scroll, beyond the call to action to buy, the customer is trying to validate whether they trust you enough to put their credit card details in. If they can then see, actually, right, I understand that, Mike started this business 5 years ago because he was super annoyed that all the t-shirts he was buying out there were really itchy, and he wanted to get a t-shirt that was made of really pure, lovely organic cotton. Oh, right, okay, I can associate this guy. He obviously understands me because that's my problem. Great, right, okay, scroll back up, buy that product. So pull in that information, the product page. Yes, you need to be clear about, right, that call to action above the fold, but ultimately that validation that people maybe used to think they were getting from the homepage or the About Us page, get that into the product page below, and things like your reviews, all these things that you've got dotted all over the place, bring them in there to get that simple win, I would say.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah, this has been an awesome conversation. Adam, thank you again for spending the last hour with us. I do want to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about Blend Commerce, where people can find more information on you, maybe what your ideal customer looks like. Just tell us all about you guys.
Yeah, sure. I mean, thank you. And so it's Blend Commerce, so blendcommerce.com, and we are the customer experience agency for Shopify brands. Essentially, the types of brands that we work with is very varied, but the one thing that all of them have in common is that they're looking to improve that customer lifetime value. So if you are a brand listening to this that maybe you're thinking about CLV more importantly, then we may be, worth having a chat to. But look, guys, I am a big fan of LinkedIn as well. So please, if you're watching on LinkedIn today, you're listening to this, do connect with me. It's just Adam Pearce, Pearce. And we'd love to have a chat and talk a little bit more.
Fantastic. Awesome. Is your team going to be at the Prosper Show by any chance?
Say again?
The Prosper Show.
In Vegas?
No, it's in Vegas.
No, I don't think my wife will let me go to Vegas right now. We have 2 small kids, and I don't think that's a recipe for disaster.
It's all right. Mine had a lot of convincing to do before before I had to sign off.
Really?
Oh yeah.
But hey, maybe if I put the request in now, next year could be a possibility. We'll see.
There you go. There you go. Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you again so much for your time today. This has been fantastic. And I mean, I know that we've learned a lot. I know everybody else has too, definitely.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Pleasure
And thank you, everybody who listened today. If you guys liked what you heard, be sure to give us a thumbs up, comment with your thoughts, share this episode with your friends, subscribe to the show, and be sure to turn on those automatic downloads or notifications. And that way you never miss a conversation with leaders in supply chain and e-commerce like Adam Pearce with Blend Commerce. Thank you again so much. And we will see you guys next week.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.